Hey there, welcome back to Thriving Astrology and More with me, your host, Taylor Schuler. This episode is another throwback from the 2022 archives. In this episode, I talk with Beth Hansen. Beth is an artist, tarot reader, and Reiki master teacher. Beth is one of the first folks that I talked to for this show. A brave soul let me consult on her astrological chart, her natal chart. She tells her story. She does phenomenal art, phenomenal work, is very connected to astrology, actually, and tarot because of a bookstore that we touch on that is local to her, which many astrologers in the Twin Cities will be familiar with. And her work is primarily with the goddesses, which is just phenomenal. And it's one of, obviously, because I have the goddess horoscope, the goddess report with Chris Journey. I love the goddesses. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Let us know what you think. And put your questions in the comments below. And I hope you enjoy connecting with Beth, and I hope you can connect with her artwork as well. You'll probably recognize and remember her from my sort of introductory trailer episode. If you are listening to the podcast, jump on YouTube and check out that episode. Some of my favorite clips are from this recording with Beth. So enjoy. Hi, welcome back. I'm Taylor Schuler, and I'm here with Beth Hansen. And Beth is an artist, tarot reader, and Reiki master teacher, as well as a phenomenal artist. And so we'll talk with Beth today about her story. So welcome, Beth. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really glad to be talking with you today.
All right. Yeah, me too, Taylor. I've been really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah. So for those listeners who might not be familiar with your work, tell us a little bit about you. Who is Beth?
Well, like you said, I wear many hats. I am an artist who works in watercolors. My concentration right now is on painting the goddess through aspects of nature. I also create jewelry with natural gemstones and crystals and wires, necklaces and rings and bracelets and things like that I charge with Reiki energy because I'm a Reiki master, and I am a tarot reader as well. So I consider tarot and Reiki being my day job, and my art is my side hustle. And there's a cat going through the screen because, it is an art studio. And I do have a cat, so you'll occasionally see her tail as she walks past, or
I love
see
it.
her as
I love it, and it's so true to your chart, as we'll see later.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's beautiful. Love the cat. Yeah, she knows we're talking, and she's like, I gotta get in there. Gotta be part of this.
Studio manager. She has to get in here. She's like, I'm the boss here. So,
yes.
Yeah,
she sure is.
Yeah, she's really good at keeping me on track of it's time to feed me, and it's time to go to bed now, and yeah. So
yeah.
She's good at everything.
Yeah. So part of what I love to talk with folks about on this show is, what kind of skills are they offering? What gifts are they offering? And how did they come to find those? So tell us a little bit about how you came to becoming an artist and doing the tarot and the Reiki.
Okay, well, art has always been a part of my life since I was a very small child. My mother painted in oils as a hobby, and so I grew up with the smell of oil paint and paint thinner from a small child. She did pass away when I was 5 years old from cancer, but by that time I knew I was an artist. And so I always drew. I started taking it more seriously as, the possibility of actually doing it for a living once I hit my 20s. Always worked a day job of some sort. And I pursued fantasy art at first. And that sort of led me into a change in my spirituality, where I was leaving behind what for me was very patriarchal Christianity and opening up to goddess spirituality. At that same time, I got my first tarot reading from a friend, and being an artist, the illustrations intrigued me. So I picked up the tarot right about the same time. So my spiritual journey and the tarot definitely went hand in hand. And this was old school. This was back in the 1900s. Like,
Don't
we're
call
starting
it that.
Yeah, so it was 1995 when I started doing this, and I was already showing my artwork at local science fiction conventions, and I was making some prints at home and selling them occasionally, but it was what really led me into all of that is just following that path and continuing to pursue it with a passion. And by the year 2000 or so, I was very serious about my artwork, and I launched my first website, and all of it started to be more, and I kept with the tarot practice as well. I did readings for friends, and then in the early 2000s, a friend of mine who later became my sister-in-law when she married my twin sister opened a store here in Minneapolis called Eye of Horus. And it's a metaphysical store. And I was firmly on the path of paganism and witchcraft. I tried Druidry, I tried traditional Wicca during that time. And she had me try out to be a reader, because I had to try out just because she was, dating my sister at the time, or living with her, and because she was a tarot reader herself, and she was very picky of who she would allow to read in the store. So I tried out for her, and so I started doing that as like a side hustle along with the art, and it all became very complicated. And for a while I was trying to be a full-time artist in the mid 2000s. That lasted about 5 years before I had to get a day job. But all the while I was still doing the tarot readings, and every new deck that came out, being at a metaphysical store, it was like, oh, this is so cool, this is so cool. And you learn something from each different version of the tarot, and it was so exciting. And over time, my path changed to being very goddess driven in around 2016. And that's when it was like, okay, I had put down my brushes for about 8.5 years. I didn't paint at all. And when I started painting again, I took up in a new medium, new style with watercolors. And that's when the goddess said, yeah, I was working through some spirituality, and because my art business had failed, I had turned to Reiki and studied Reiki as a self-healing, and then fell in love with that and added that to the milieu. And in 2008, I became a Reiki master teacher. And yeah, but by 2016, I'm like, okay, now what am I doing here? I'm starting to paint the goddess all the time, and goddess in aspects of nature, because number one, I didn't want to do any cultural appropriation. I wanted to stay away from that. But I really wanted to explore the divine feminine. I'm really committed to the fact that women are powerful, and we can connect with the divine aspect in us, and men can connect to a female divine aspects within themselves, and everybody in between on the gender spectrum. And so for me, this is a no-brainer. And as soon as I decided, yeah, I want to do this, I have an idea for 10 paintings, a nice big series to learn watercolor and to learn all the things and start channeling that energy and using the Reiki in it as part of the process. And when I went to present it to people, I decided I wanted to create jewelry with the goddesses and created these little cameo necklaces. That way I could charge those with Reiki and get the whole package together. So definitely this iteration of me as an artist is bringing everything I know about tarot symbology into how I translate and create a picture that has deeper meaning spiritually, connecting with nature, because that's my jam. and it just all comes together now. And as will be revealed in my chart, this is completely normal for me because I am so Gemini.
Yes.
I do all the things, and it's all about communication and sharing that Reiki and being able to do and serve community on a one-to-one face-to-face basis, which is my preferred method of being with people. Small groups and face-to-face interactions make me super happy. And now the art is just really starting to rock and roll for me, because there was that huge gap where I couldn't show my artwork. But this spring I was able to put it in some shows, and I'm like, holy cow, I got huge response of great positivity, particularly at Paganicon, which is a pagan convention here in the Twin Cities. A wonderful convention, wonderful people, which has a juried art show. And I had gotten juried in back for year 2020. And so they just held my spot. And so, yeah, I was really able to connect face to face with people. By the time that rolled around, I had just finished the next 4. I was going to be presenting instead of 10 goddesses like I did the year previously. I had 4 more. Well, now I had another 5. And so people who hadn't seen my artwork, and, because basically they didn't get to see the 4. So they got 9 new paintings, almost twice as much. The body of work is starting to grow. My goal is to reach 100. I'm working on number 20 right now. And I am so excited about this. I am so happy about this. Yeah, I've been through a heck of a lot between leading up to 2016, when I experienced some healing in order to get back into painting, and allowed the painting itself to guide and heal me, and reaching out to people and getting great responses for the artwork, touching them in meaningful ways is beyond my expectations of when I first, started learning how to draw, or even was a fantasy artist. But because it's coming from a place of spirit and heart and meaning, and
absolutely. I see all of that in your chart. And I'm wondering if you can just say more about how your work touches people, and what kind of response you got from people, and why.
Oh, wow. So, I sell online, I sell on Etsy, and people will leave reviews, and they'll say how much they connected with this image as goddess. And some people are buying it for themselves. Some people are buying it for gifts. There's creatives who want a particular energy in their studio, so they'll get a small print and put it in their workspace, and just to help inspire them creatively. I've had people, what I love is I do love the whole gifting idea too, because they do make great gifts, and it's like, oh yeah, we got this. I got this for my wife and she's pregnant. And this was my earth goddess, which is a very round goddess in the Southwest. And he's like, yeah, this is perfect. We want this in the baby's room, as the mother goddess always being present in the baby's room. Oh my gosh, it's just a way that people can bring the goddess into their home, and whatever goddess they follow, or just a general idea of goddess. I as a Gemini, I believe the cultural goddesses are individual and real. I also believe in the overarching energy of goddess energy in all of nature, Mother Nature. And it's impossible to fathom that kind of energy as a single being. Just like I think it's impossible to fathom the God energy as a single being. So that's why I'm polytheist, pantheist. I'm all the theists except for monotheist.
Yes. It's super Gemini. Your Gemini is
Yeah.
showing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. So, yeah.
Yeah, seeing it reach people on that level, and somebody saying, oh, I found you at just the right time, this is so beautiful, I can't wait to wear it, or they open it up and they feel the Reiki energy pouring out, and it's just it's more than can be expected. And I actually sold a few originals at Paganism, and people coming up to me telling me how much that particular image meant to them and why they wanted the original. And it was breathtaking. And I just feel so blessed in order to have my creations be welcomed by people in love, because I put them out there in love. And sometimes it's fierce and tumultuous love of the storm goddess. Sometimes it's the calm, soothing energy of, the green goddess, or flowery energy. Or right now, my next series is going to be animals. So that's what I'm working on right now. Super psyched. And I have all the ideas. So if anybody asks me, oh, where do you get your ideas? Well, first they flood into my brain, and then I have to write them all down. And then I am going to be busy for years because those ideas are already written down. I have 100. I probably will have more. And that's how it works.
Yep. If you've got a strong Gemini in your chart, that's definitely the way it works much of the time. It's abundance of information. So I love that you have prints and you also have pendants, and you mentioned wire wrapping. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Wire wrapping is like when you take a stone and you take basically a wire and you wrap it around it to hold the stone. And you'd think I'd have something handy to show, but this is a podcast, so you're gonna have to go to my website, harmonygoddess.com, and you can, this goes on YouTube, or I can forward some images along.
Oh, absolutely. We'll put the link in the bio and try to get an image up for YouTube for sure.
Absolutely. So I'm just on my beginning stages of learning about astrology and how all this stuff works. I'm fortunate to be working where I'm working because we do have a staff astrologer and she has started doing monthly astro chats with another person that she is working with as her side hustle with astrology, as well as being the staff astrologer. And we just sit down there and we talk about whatever's going on in the, the signs and planets for the month and how it relates to our charts and how we relate to that. And it's been really helpful.
Yeah, I bet.
Just do things bit by bit. And because every other time it was just like, I'd start reading and then before you knew it, I was like, in overwhelm. I have to take things one piece at a time. Like when I learned tarot, it was before the days of the internet. So you went to the library and you had a limited amount of books that you could check out on the tarot. And so I checked out 2 books and I pulled them out and I would write notes from each one. And then I would write, pull out my little tarot card and write my own thoughts of what I thought that illustration might mean as, a visual person who loves visual storytelling and storytelling in general, and putting that together. So I forgot where I started with that because Gemini mind.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. And I think I'll take that as a cue to share your chart, because I think we can dive into your chart based on some of what you've shared. I see a lot of, we've been referencing your Gemini, but let's show folks what we're talking about. So here we've got Beth's natal chart. We've got an early degree of Capricorn rising. We've got the sun and the moon in Gemini. In the 6th house using the Regiomontanus house system. And I love this chart for so many reasons. You speak your chart so beautifully. Definitely got that strong Gemini energy, like we mentioned. And Gemini, loves information. It's an air sign. It's very into knowledge and communication, being ruled by the planet Mercury, which is in charge of communication and travel and movement. And Geminis usually like to use their hands. And so you're saying you paint. And the 6th house is the house of developing our skills, the skills that we share on a daily basis. And so the skills that your sun, the light that shines from your soul, and your moon, because we've got this with the sun and the moon below the horizon, meaning we'd probably see this as a night chart. So both of those luminaries, how your soul shines, how your emotions shine, it's really connected there to the skills and the knowledge that you've cultivated and that you can also share with the world. It shows a feeling of being nurtured and being able to nourish and nurture others with these Gemini skills, with this knowledge. Knowledge is power. And Gemini and Sagittarius are on this axis of the local community and the broader community. And so you spoke so beautifully about how your artwork is informed by culture as well. And so I love to see that there, that you're tapping into this collective unconscious, but also very grounded and informed at the same time by the knowledge that you seek, whether it's at a library or something like this. Libraries are very Gemini, but we also see libraries in the 3rd house at the bottom of the chart, where you have the planet Saturn. Saturn tells us what kind of work we do in the world, what kind of authority we can be, and also sort of what we put really hard work into. And so we see that in your chart in the sign of Pisces. And Pisces is about compassion. It's about spirituality. It's about transcendence. In the house, the 3rd house of communication and local travel, you talked about you like to work with groups of people, and also just I think like developing that skill again. I'm losing my train of thought, but that's a good bit there about that Saturn and Pisces in the 3rd house. Oh, libraries. I think that's where I was coming back to. Right. So I think that's pretty cool. We see libraries there in the 3rd house. And so your story about going to the library and checking out just 2 books, Saturn's also the house of limitation, or not the house. Saturn can sometimes represent where we find limitations. And so the fact that you found limitations in your library and it was like 2 only, that's super Saturn in the 3rd. I love that. And yeah, so that's really beautiful. And then we look to some other indicators about Pisces and this fantasy and spirituality. You were saying that you were doing fantasy artwork and then you found the tarot. And I think that those things are really connected, right? I mean, they're different, but they're both full of archetypes. They're both full of stories. They're both full of this transcending the everyday and finding greater meaning in something outside of ourselves, something greater than ourselves. I think that's pretty Pisces. And so the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter. And so we'll look to Jupiter to like add a little bit more flavor and context to this. And we see Jupiter over on the right side of the chart here in the sign of Cancer, close to Mercury. Again, Mercury, Gemini, communication, right? And so Jupiter in Cancer is what we call exalted. It's super comfortable. If you think about Jupiter, Jupiter is about abundance. It's about bountifulness. It's our teacher. It's the greater benefic. It gives us blessings in the sign of Cancer, which, you know, Cancer season is summertime. It's when the trees are really lush and growing. And so abundance, abundance. And going back to that Saturn and Pisces, even though Saturn's kind of restrictive, Pisces is very disseminating. It's like the water that just goes through everything. And so you've got this sort of like big energy here, whether it's Pisces or Cancer or Gemini, where it's like, let's get a lot of this. Let's get a lot of information and let's do it in a way that I'm sharing this with people, 7th house. I'm talking with other people, 7th house, Mercury there. And you probably show up for people in a way that's very caring and nurturing and maternal. And the fact that you focus on the goddess, many goddesses would embody that sort of, I mean, you're the expert here. I'm not the goddess expert, but in my experience, the goddesses, even Diana, the goddess of, the warrior goddess it's a female energy. It's this maternal energy, and maternal can show up in so many ways. It's not just one way, right? There are these bits and parts of ourselves that show up in so many different ways. And then, we go back to Gemini again, because Mercury rules that sign of Gemini, and the moon rules Cancer. And so we see them in a relationship with each other where they're, you might say they're kind of in each other's houses. It's like, I'm in Beth's house, Beth's in my house. I'm like, hey, Beth, where's the, extra towels or something like that. And Beth can really like give me what I need. And so there's, again, this abundance, this really easily flowing energy here between how you shine, how your soul wants to shine, your emotions and how you feel nurtured, your ability to communicate nurturing messages to other people. And even in that modality that is bringing in this goddess energy. Another thing I find really interesting about your chart based on your story is that you were talking a bit about witchcraft and the goddess again, and the skills that you've developed, right? Like this is to be an artist, to be an artisan, to do this kind of work, it takes this 6th house energy, but it's also Virgo energy too. And Virgo, we see this sign at the top of the chart. It's ruling the 9th house, which is about what we put out into the world and what we communicate to the world. But most of the sign is sitting here in the 8th house. And using other house systems, we would kind of see Virgo really ruling the 8th. And we see some planets up here. We've got Uranus, which is your divine inspiration, and Pluto is this power and powerful transformation. And the asteroid Hygeia, which is about our health and our hygiene, all there together in this 8th house, where that's where we find information about the occult, about witchcraft, about things that we don't really like talking about in mainstream society today. And so you've got this power of divine inspiration that comes from Virgo, this lineage, this legacy that needs to be passed on to future generations in order to heal the world. Virgo is also a sign that's very connected to nature, Virgo and Pisces, both together, very connected to nature. And so that Saturn in Pisces talking to these planets in Virgo brings in this compassion, transcendence, the witchcraft, the fantasy, but also that grounded energy that really has the power to impact people on a really important level, especially folks who might be going through something. The eighth house it's sometimes a bit of a difficult house. We find psychologists often will have some eighth house placements because there's this grappling with transition. Whenever we face a crossroads in our life or major transition, there's eighth house topics that come in. And so I think it's really beautiful that you've got that witchcraft, paganicon you talked about, energy. And then I think the last thing, there might be more, but I'm just looking at my notes here, that is really interesting is that I look to the nodes sometimes to inform some information about the chart. The nodes are mathematical, but also physical places in the sky. So we can't see them, but we know where they are once an eclipse happens. And as of the time that we're episode, that we're having an eclipse, we just had an eclipse happen on May 1st or April 30th, and we're going to have another eclipse happen on Sunday, May 15th. It's a lunar eclipse going from Scorpio to Taurus, and you actually have your nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, and they're actually at the same point in the sky in your natal chart that they're at right now in the sky. And so you're having what we call a nodal return. You're born about a month after an eclipse because you were born on the new moon in Gemini instead of in Taurus. But it really shows like the gifts that we bring from our past life or our early life and the path our soul will travel towards or gravitate towards, or a life will take in this life or later on in life. And so having this north node, we see it in the fifth house, which represents our joy and pleasurable activities, sometimes romance and things like that, but really creativity, because the activities that happen in the fifth house, they lead to the creation of something, whether that's children or art. Children are pieces of art too, right? Like they are this creative endeavor. They're this beautiful, and I won't say pieces of art, that sounds kind of like, but, like they're artwork, people are art, like we are this beautiful art pieces, our lives. And so this north node energy is like moving towards the creativity, moving towards becoming an artist. And close to the north node, we see some other things here. We see the planet Venus, which is at home in Taurus. Venus is how we relate to other people in relationships. Sometimes it's female identified people that will come into our lives. And it's also there with the goddesses, Juno and Ceres, right? So the goddess of the feminine, the wife, Juno, how we're loyal, where our loyalties reside, what kind of partner we can be and how we partner with others. And Ceres, the mother archetype of
this
how
is so
to
informative. Oh my gosh.
Oh, Siri is talking to me. As I said, Siri, okay, I better not say that anymore because the Apple bot is talking to me. I don't know if you could hear that, but anyway, this goddess, her daughter was Persephone, who went through this underworld journey. And so she was in charge of like cereal, like making the food or letting us grow the food, the harvest. And so Ceres is really how we nourish and nurture ourselves. It's similar to the moon, but different. I don't want to conflate the two, but it's how we feed ourselves. And so we're seeing like this being able to partner and relate to others through this goddess energy, certainly. And it's a grounded goddess energy because it's in Taurus, an earth sign. And it's concerned with beauty. Taurus is very material in the sense of like, it needs something tangible. It needs to create something in the house of creating things, where Venus has her joy as well. And so you've got this really beautiful Venus. It's so well resourced that just speaks to someone who is a naturally gifted artist, creates things. And I just love that story of how you work with the goddess to create art that people feel really drawn to. The North Node is also kind of like a magnet. And so it's like, okay, people are really feeling drawn, you're feeling drawn here. And you also mentioned that you feel like you like to work with groups of people. Is that right?
Yeah, I do like, small groups of people. It is my favorite way of, I love things where people can gather and be together, whether it's in ritual or if it's in, just I prefer like small house parties to big events. And that, I think that's why I like things like, fantasy and science fiction conventions, because you've got all the little rooms and you've got all the little programming and you've got all these opportunities for meeting people, and you've got people have little suites for their different things, and Paganicon is along that same way, only about I've never missed a Paganicon.
I love it. And so that really speaks.
It's been 10 years.
Yeah, I think that speaks to the 11th house that what your 11th house looks like over here. And so we've got the sign of Scorpio. We have the South Node. The South Node really represents the gifts that we bring. Early on in life, the South Node might be kind of hard and give us some challenges that help us to really build and develop those muscles that we need to develop in order to share our gifts with the world at the end of the day. But once we have become adults, that South Node gives us these gifts of gold that we can offer. And so we see Neptune here too. Neptune, again, spirituality, linked to the sign of Pisces. And so it's really beautiful that you have Scorpio, which is also related to the occult or really deep, intense feelings and spirituality and fantasy. So there's this like fantasy witchcraft energy here with that South Node in the 11th house, which is groups of people and community.
Can I just interject something here that I don't think I mentioned to you before? My boyfriend is, well, not Scorpio. He's a Sagittarius, but he is a fantasy writer by trade. He's an author of over 30 fantasy books. So that's pretty cool. Important to me. Yeah.
And I think that's
and creativity.
I think it's really interesting because when folks are trying to find out, who's the right partner for them, we look at the 7th house. The 7th house can be our partners or spouses, long-term partners of any kind, whether it's romantic or business, and our clients. And so in this case, if we're talking about your boyfriend, if this is a serious boyfriend, to learn more about him, we'd say, okay, your 7th house is ruled by the sign of Cancer. Where is the ruler of the 7th house? What planet is in charge? And we see that moon in Gemini. And so I would expect that this person is very nurturing and nourishing like the moon, but also Gemini communication, a writer, definitely makes a lot of sense. So especially with that mutual reception where Mercury and the moon are talking to one another. And so there really is that energy of someone who's a good communicator or likes a lot of information, but also has some of these Cancerian type qualities as well. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that about your boyfriend. Yeah. There's that energy of bringing in that spirituality, that fantasy into your life. And I think it's really a great point that you bring up, because the chart does not just represent ourselves. It represents the experiences that we have, the places that we can go to, and the other people in our lives. And sometimes the experiences that other people go through that we witness and that impact us in some way. And so the energy is there. It's just, how is it used? Am I actively using it? Am I passively using it? Or am I inviting other people into my life that really bring that energy into my life?
I want to make sure you heard me correctly. My boyfriend is a Sagittarius.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I heard you say he was a Sagittarius.
Yeah. Okay. Because my ex-husband was a Cancer.
Oh, okay. So that's another way it can show
my brother is a Cancer as well.
Yeah.
So that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. I think the seventh house, sometimes you'll find a partner who has some planets that are in that house, but oftentimes
I would love to see his chart as I learn more about all things astrology.
Yeah.
I'm gonna poke at my boyfriend and say, hey, can we run your chart?
Yeah. But I think it's really it's interesting because it describes the person. It doesn't mean that they are a Cancer or a Gemini.
Okay.
But I think you said he's a writer. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
So that's where we see that Gemini energy coming through with the Cancer and the Gemini describing what kind of partner that you have. So even though his sun is in Sagittarius, like he's a writer, and so so I think that's pretty cool to see and use astrology for things like that too.
Yeah. So shameless plug, his name is Stephen Brust, Brust. And like I said, he has over 30 books out there in print. And I don't know if they're all in print right now, but most of them are. And so yeah, he's made his living as a fantasy / science fiction writer for 30 years.
That's so cool. I love it. So check out his site.
We'll make sure to. And he's a great cook. So that's nourishing.
That's that Cancer and the moon energy. Yes. Thank you.
Literally nourishes me. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So any questions or sort of responses to anything that I shared? I know I just kind of talked through.
There was a lot there to digest. So nodal return is like a new thing. I saw a post of one of the other astrologers that I follow talking about they're going through their nodal return right now. And at this age that I'm at, I'm going through it. It's like, oh, okay. What does this mean? Maybe Taylor will tell me what this means. And that it's usually a cycle that lasts about a year and a half.
Yep.
Is that
right? That is true. Yep, that's true. And thank you for bringing that up, because I totally did just skip right over and glossed over that. And that's something that merits a little bit more fleshing out. So like I said, the nodes are the places in the sky where eclipses happen. And due to the wobble of the Earth and some other factors, the nodes continue to move, and they move in what we'd call retrograde fashion. I don't love using that word because it kind of triggers people into thinking, oh no, something's wrong because it's retrograde. But really it just means it's moving through the signs in the opposite order that the sun moves through. You know, the sun moves from Aries through Pisces, but the nodes actually move kind of like Pisces through Aries that way. It's like a clockwise or a counterclockwise. So anyway, that's just the way that the nodes move. So they start at 29 degrees of a sign, and then they move towards 0 degrees of a sign. So your nodes at 25 degrees had just entered the sign of Taurus. And so a month earlier, I'm actually thinking, I can't progress this chart forward, but I'm thinking a month earlier, the nodes wouldn't have been in the sign of Gemini because they move a bit slower than that. So a month earlier, when the sun and the moon hit the nodes, you would have had the sun and the moon hit the nodes at the full moon. And then before that, 2 weeks before that, the sun and the moon would have both been at the north node in Taurus. And so that full moon eclipse would have happened just 2 or 3 weeks before you were born. And it shows our life path. It shows where we pull energy. It shows in the Vedic tradition and the more Western classical Hellenistic traditions and medieval traditions all have slightly different views of the nodes. Some think one node is more positive and one node is more negative. I like to just kind of look at an understanding, because I think that there's a fatalistic charge to astrology as a whole. And I don't think astrology is something to be feared. I actually think that the fear that is built into astrology is in service to further trying to alienate us from knowledge that can empower us to live better, happier lives. And so I don't like to take the negative view, and not to be toxic positivity, but just because I don't want to frighten people, because that's not helpful in any way. But there is a way to be real about something without being toxically positive or fatalistic and frightening people, right? So the North Node kind of pulls us in that direction, and the South Node also can pull us in that direction too. It's just like, is it the positive side of a magnet, or is it the negative side of the magnet? And what do we want to do with that energy? So I know I still haven't answered your question yet.
It's positive or negative charge doesn't mean something is good or bad.
Right.
It just means that this is the way this energy works, and this is the way this energy works.
Yes.
And, you know, both as a Reiki master and somebody who believes in, you know, spells, there's different kinds of energy out there that you can work with.
Absolutely.
How you work with it and how you connect with it. And I think learning astrology at any phase in life can only be more helpful in dealing. I mean, we all have our ups and downs, and all the things about life, you know, we go through challenges. And if you can understand, you know, what the pattern is, then you can start making more sense of the tapestry of life.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
That's how I, you know, visually view it. And we're constantly changing and weaving and shifting colors and, you know, adding a new thread here and there as we go through our lives. Because that's how complicated it is. It's literally a tapestry, and each day is another stitch.
I love that. And that's so Saturn and Pisces of you to say that, that there's this tapestry that we're weaving together. It's like this thing that like doesn't exist, and we're Saturn kind of weaving it together. So I think that's really beautiful. But so the North Node the North Node and South Node also comes from a story of a dragon. And the North Node represents the dragon's mouth, whereas the South Node represents the dragon's tail. What do we do with mouths? We feed them, we put energy into them, right? We become hungry. Well, this dragon was kind of cut in half. And so the stomach, you know, the stuff we put into the mouth isn't going through the tail the way that we normally digest food. It's kind of just emptying out the middle into perhaps like a black hole or something. But the tail is wanting, you know, the tail is wanting this food, and it's not getting it. And so there is this sense of energy coming in, and then a desire to receive more energy. Or another way to look at it with the South Node is not just like wanting to receive energy, but the function of a tail, the function of a trunk or our digestive system is to empty out, is to release, is to let go. But there were good things that were in there. There were nutrients that we needed to digest that we need to hold on to as well. And so it's about discerning the difference between what nutrients are we holding on to that are that gold that we bring from our past experiences or past lives? And what are the things that we had these experiences and it's time to let them go? So that's the South Node. So when we have a nodal return, we're being given an opportunity to revisit that story in our lives and to take another step. And so every 9 years, we have 9.5 years, we have a nodal opposition or a nodal return. And then every 19 years, we have one as well. So it takes 19 years for the nodes to return. So 1938, 57, 56, 57-ish. Yeah. We're going to be having that. And the nodes, you know, your nodal return is exact for, some people say 2 degrees before and 2 degrees after. Some people can say the whole time it's in the sign. And I would say from my experience, the whole time it's in the sign, or if your nodes are kind of towards the end or beginning of a sign, it can kind of be like in the sign before it. Just depends how close it is. you might feel this for like a year and a half, and you're not going to feel it every day, just like all astrology,
Right.
but it's going to be like, oh yeah, I look back to those years and I think, yeah, that's when some things really changed. I kind of was feeling this like underlying story kind of developing in some sort of a way. So the fact that you were talking about Paganism, I'm not sure when that happened, but your work being well received.
March.
Yeah.
It
So
mid-March.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense for that being something that's important for you. And I'm sure once the nodes have gone all the way through, you'll look back at that and feel like, wow, that was a really great experience of me being in community and sharing my creativity and my art with folks. That was a turning point for me. And it sounds like it was a positive experience for you. And so I'm really happy for that. I think the nodal returns can tend to be a little bit more easy and happier for people. The nodal oppositions are a little bit more difficult because it is like putting that battery with the negative and the two positive sides together and kind of getting that.
And getting resistance.
Yeah, but that energy is important, right? Like that is the creative friction that we need sometimes to really establish who we are, what we want, where we're going, and what we don't want, and where we don't want to go, and who we don't want to be. Until we have a mirror of ourselves, we can't always get to that next step in our journey.
Oh, I love that mirror aspect as a Gemini.
As a Gemini, right?
And
yeah.
My sister and I were mirror twins.
I love that you were twins in the Twin City in the sign of the twins, and you also had both your luminaries there too, which is another twinning thing going on. And mutual reception with Mercury, which is, Mercury is about duality and sometimes tricksters, and twins can certainly be tricksters, like who am I and who are you? And so, yeah, so I think I'll stop sharing your chart right now. And
so that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beth, for letting us look at your chart and talk about it and for giving us your reactions. I think it's really helpful for other folks if they have anything similar and they're trying to learn about their charts. Like, it might, you're not Beth, but you might learn something from it that can help you on your way, absolutely. Right? Yeah. So Beth, where can folks find you if they want to get in touch with you for any of your offerings, or if they want to check out your art? I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes and in the notes below. But why don't you tell folks who might be listening?
Okay, so where to find me for my artwork is harmonygoddess.com. And that, that's full of all the goddess art. And because the wire wrapping is newer for me, that I'll be adding that stuff over the next few months. But that's the best place to really keep in touch with what I'm doing artistically. If you want to know about my journey as a Reiki practitioner and Reiki master, and how I work with the tarot, I have a separate website for that typical Gemini called reikiartist.com, which started as a blog when I first learned Reiki. So if you want to dig back into like year 20 something, 2007 or so, I sat there and I blogged my journey with Reiki from the beginning. So I haven't looked back at those links because they're ancient now. I have no idea, because I would share links and stuff, but it's all there. It's all archived thanks to WordPress and
Wonderful.
Thanks to just keeping that domain around. So so that's got a lot of very old blog posts, and now I'm posting again, but this time more about tarot and energy and healing, and I also recently did a blog post that was about how to cleanse your home.
I love it.
With
I love
energy and intention, and so which is totally where I am in my, because part of me is like, okay, we want our homes to be clean and clear and full of goddesses and full of life and full of love. And that's my jam.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, those are.
I will definitely be checking that out as I
go to the impls.com, where you can schedule a reading or Reiki session with me. And so that's where I work 4 days a week.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Beth, for joining me and sharing your story and your gifts and your art, your talent with the world. It's much needed and it's very much appreciated. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Taylor. You actually just sort of bounced out on me.
Oh, no.
I left people there for a minute, but it came back up. So if you said anything else other than thank you so much, I didn't hear it.
Oh, no worries. I just said thank you so much. You know, we really appreciate your talents and gifts and your story and sharing it with us. So
it's been wonderful chatting with you, Taylor, and I can't wait to listen to your podcast and hear you talk to other folks, because like I said, this is my jam, one-on-one communication and discovering who people are. I love that stuff. I love this stuff. So yeah,
awesome.
It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, audience, for joining us, and take good care. We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.